Today, what I wanted to talk about is indigestion in our mind. You know, if there's something you eat and you can't digest, like bell peppers for a lot of us, or something that just doesn't go down smoothly. And your body will tell you because something might repeat. Or maybe you're somebody who gets heartburn. You know that feeling of like, I can't digest it easily. And you're aware of it because your body is going to give you indicators. And similarly, when something happens in life that we can't digest, we get indigestion in our mind too. And it repeats. The loop will repeat. And that story will replay until we can digest it. And primarily, there are two ways of digesting something that's repeating in our mind. And I want to focus this TSC on this particular tool. It might seem subtle, but if you can click it, it's hugely beneficial. In its simplest form, there's two ways of digesting something that's not easily digestible. And one is we go further into the story and resolve it. And the other one is that we rest in the stillness and we bring it in and it gets dissolved. There is a belief system out there advocated by scripture and that puts thousands of years of falsehoods behind it. When you rest in the stillness, not everything can be processed post-awakening because you have an abiding awakening. Not everything can be. And I want to talk to you today about knowing the difference. Because a lot of people still want to believe that once an abiding awakening is here, well, everything will get burned up in it. Nothing will really bother me the same. It won't bother you in the same way, but presence, you know, the abiding awakening mightn't actually digest it. It mightn't be enough. And sometimes what we do is, if we're not clear about when do I resolve it with my mind, and when do I resolve it by going into the stillness? When we're not clear, we like to kid ourselves, and our nervous system has a way of burying and putting a lid on some undigested things. And that can continue post-awakening. That the nervous system is like, okay, we're not processing that. It's up, we're not processing it. Okay, let's shove it down into the unconscious again. And that absolutely can happen post-awakening. And one of the major reasons why this has, you know, perpetuated in scripture is because the spiritual teachers were removed from their triggers. So they didn't know what triggers were remaining because the triggers were removed. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll were removed. And of course, the triggers kind of sometimes burst through, and bad behavior and harm happened. And if they didn't burst through, well, you know, we have another system. We can push something down into our unconscious and deny it. So what do we do to have a more wholesome, authentic way of managing ourselves and knowing what your awakening will take care of and what it won't take care of? And it'll be a little bit different for each of us. Yet, as long as we have an awareness of how can I digest this? Can it be digested through the stillness by bringing it all in here, into pure consciousness? Or can it be digested with my mind in the place where it happened, like with relationships and cause and effect? Does it have to be pulled apart there? I do think that each situation is different. I do think it's trial and error, because we're not at a place yet of where this topic is available in books, or is being spoken about, or is being explored by the interface between psychology and spirituality, that transpersonal spirituality, that wing in the middle. I'm not sure that we're down to the subtleties. And so there is no, okay, that's the category that I bring into the stillness, and that's the category where I have to manage. We're not quite there. But what we can do is each of us develop the tool, the insight, the capacity to know which is it. Which is it? And that's going to come from trial and error. And I'd like you to identify which one do you lean towards right now. Do you, when there's a repeating loop, indigestion in your mind, when there's a repeating loop in your head, is your go-to to bring it into stillness, bring it into meditation and let it dissolve? Or is your go-to to try and figure it out, bring it to a therapist, talk about it with a friend, write about it, resolve it phenomenally? Which is your go-to? And so notice if your preferred way, does it work? Does it work for you? And do you have a preference? Like, do you love going in and analyzing and working it out and talking about that aspect of yourself? Or do you want to avoid the analysis because it gives you a pain in the head? Do you have a belief somewhere that I actually want the stillness to do this? I really want the easiest path. Like, what's orienting your dominant practice? Yeah. I enjoy the problem solving. Yeah. Okay. The primary reason of why I'm asking you to engage in the chat in this way is I want you to recognize what goes on for you, to bring your own methods of growth into your own consciousness, for you to really know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and why you're choosing one methodology over another. Okay, I'm going to add a point of clarification here, because Alexander asked, I remember you saying that there comes a point in post-awakening where consciousness unravels itself automatically. How does this connect to the topic today? Yeah. Yes, Alexander, there is a point, and you've leapfrogged me into the next level of it. The more you hang out in consciousness, the more that that's your primary viewing point, it's as though the light from that will make any obstacle move towards resolution. The light from that will propel you in whatever efficient way to bring it into the stillness, to take it for a walk, to take it to a therapist. The light itself is a catalyst and I don't know, a new motivator to unravel it, because anything that goes towards that light, it becomes kind of intolerable. And so it's more that it's not that consciousness will take care of it completely, but it will make the unraveling happen faster. But the means of the unraveling could still be a therapist, could still be. But now you know that consciousness is pushing through to resolve it. You have that sense of that, this is where I need to go with this. This is what's happening here. Because the agenda of the mind needing to fix it isn't there. The need for comfort and for order and for harmony in order for the mind to feel better is not playing. What is playing is the movement of consciousness, and you're bowing down to that. You're respecting that. I hope that's making sense. So it's a bit more subtle than yeah, you know, with a long-standing, abiding awakening, consciousness just unravels everything. It's a bit more subtle. It's more efficient. It doesn't really tolerate too much stickiness for too long. It will motivate you towards resolution. And there's a sense that you don't have a choice. And the resolution is being designed by consciousness. That's the subtle shift. Okay, so let's do an exercise. Just want to scan through this. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for checking out to see what's going on for you. How do you work? And sharing it here, owning what works for you. That's really great. So here, let's try something then. We're going to welcome in a loop, an undigested thought, experience, something that replays with a little bit of charge. And see if your body can feel safe, even though that thought is around now. It's just a thought. Stay separate from it. It's just a thought. Even though it might have emotions and anger and frustration and shame and guilt, all of these things can like tag on to an experience. That's indigestion for you. Now we're turning into vomiting and diarrhea. It's that kind of thing. The emotions kind of amplify the symptoms, huh? So I'm sorry, I'm laughing at myself where this is going. My brain often hears what I'm talking about at these Truth Serum events. You know, my brain is hearing it, playing catch up. So I'm being entertained by myself, I suppose, at some level. All right, so we have that thought, and you're separate. Your nervous system needs to feel safe. Know you're safe. You're calm. See if you feel calm. Can you relax even more? Can you dial down even more? Let that quietude, that stillness, that sacred place, let that have you, let that hold you. Let it take up more space inside you right now. Let it take up more space. And see if your body is enjoying that stillness. Is there a connection between the stillness and your body? That's a good indicator that, yeah, you've sank into it. In that still place, I want you to go into listening mode. And let's bring in that loop. It's like, all right, so this story is something that continues, or this habit, or this trigger, or this annoyance, or this strong opinion. This is one that kind of gets my attention. I want you to kind of bring that into your orbit as if it's in front of you. There's that blob of that thought. And it has these feelings attached. And it's a story about ... Withdraw your attention into the stillness and listen. Does the stillness want to help digesting it? Or is the stillness disconnected from it? Like, is the stillness saying, doesn't really exist? Or is there this magnetism from the stillness where it wants to pull it in and hold it? So I'm really asking you to be okay with something that causes some pain, causes some suffering. To be so okay with that being in your orbit. You have so much objectivity that you're actually able to hear what wants to happen. Feel into what wants to happen here. Maybe the only one who wants to get rid of it is the personal I. Maybe it's so far removed from that inner stillness that it's really very clear that you have to use the mind and, take action in the world in order to resolve it. I'm hoping that I've given you enough pointers for you to be able to sense what's the movement of consciousness here. So I'm leapfrogging into. I'm concerned if I've jumped too many steps. What wants to happen here? Okay. So in that stillness, if I pull the story, that thought, if I pull it into the stillness, that spaciousness, if I pull it in there, what happens? Will it bounce back out? Will it dissolve? Is it soothing? Is it a beautiful thing to do? Or, sorry, Jac, that does not want to happen. Or does consciousness help a little bit? But it's a band-aid.